get her going.
Okay, welcome everyone. I'm glad you all joined us today. We're doing another of the Storyteller series with the Southport Historical Society. Although today, not so much a story as it is reminiscing with my old pal and classmate, Ronnie Shannon. We're going to be talking about, Ronnie grew up on the beaches. He grew up on Long Beach, which of course later became Oak Island. And we're going to be talking about the early days and what we remember when there were just a few families that lived year round over there on the beach. So one of the first things I wanted to mention, Ronnie, is that, you know, back then in my earliest memories, it was already Yaupon Beach City and Long Beach City. I don't know exactly when they were incorporated, but that's my earliest memory. We already had those two cities established. Is that how you remember it?
That's how I remember it, yeah. And, you know, two very distinct communities, you know, and
Right.
each one brought a certain quality to Oak Island.
Yeah, I agree. And so wasn't Yaupon predominantly developed by the Barbie family?
That's right, yeah. They started out before.
Yeah. And Long Beach by a man named Middleton, right?
E.F. Middleton, yes, correct.
Right.
He was a nice man. He was from Charleston, South Carolina. And,
Yeah, okay. And, you know, so some of my earliest memories, and I'm going to kind of go into talking about, you know, Yaupon Beach. But we also have to mention Caswell Beach, which became incorporated probably in the 80s, right?
I think you're right. I'm not sure of the date, but it wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, and so it was a more recent municipality, and it did not join in on the Oak Island thing, if I remember correctly.
You're correct. You know, the consolidation thing was tried years ago, and it failed on several attempts until 1999, and it was passed in the town Yaupon and Oak Island or Long Beach incorporated or merged.
Right. Well, you know, back in those days, because we all went to school in Southport, I knew all you guys very well. But there was a small group of year-round residents over there. I wonder sometimes if people realize just how small, you could probably count everybody on two hands, right?
Well, you're exactly right. Back in the early days when you had to catch a school bus, you know, to come up here to school, one school bus picked up everybody on the island. And I believe the last stop was out there at Dutchman Acres somewhere, and it still had 2 or 3 seats left on the back of the bus. So there wasn't that many.
Yeah. Yeah. And then, of course, you know, if you look at it today, there's, you know, a large number of year-round residents that developed. And of course, back then it was more of a beach getaway cottage type thing that people would come down to during the summers or on holidays. So nobody was living year round.
Yeah, in the early 60s, you know, most of the time the houses, when they closed them up in the wintertime because they didn't have heat. And
Right.
So, you know, you had to drain the pipes to keep them from freezing. So that even cut the number of people that were down in the wintertime. So after Labor Day, we pretty much had the beach to ourselves.
Yeah, this kind of reminds me of that Jimmy Buffett song, When the Coast Was Clear.
That's right. That's right.
Because he's talking about shutting everything down, shutting down the water slide and all that stuff.
Oh,
so yeah, those are kind of, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, that's when the old timers got together doing the fox hunts and the cookouts for the fire department and rescue squad. And it was always a pretty good time. That's how we had our little community time.
Yeah, that's cool. And I wanted to ask you, so did you, I know you were born in Dozier Hospital like I was, but did your parents already have the store over there? Did you immediately go home to that store?
Yeah, they had gone over to the island in 1951, and Dad bought a house, and then they built the store. And that's where we ended up when we went home. And then, of course, Hazel came shortly thereafter and took all that away, started all over again.
Yeah, Hazel wiped out everything except one house, right?
Well, I think there's about 6 or 7 houses left, but they were most of those were cinder block houses, and they survived it.
Well, we talked about the connection to Southport, and because all of you went to school with us in Southport, in my mind, even though y'all were different communities, I always saw us as one community. I never saw it as a different type of community. Is that how you felt about it?
Well, exactly. I have roots in Southport. With my dad's father was the general manager of the railroad back in the late 20s and 30s and early 40s. And then, of course, my mom, she was a Harrelson. So we had that connection there with Mom's family. So
Yeah,
I
Dan,
I beg pardon?
go ahead.
Yeah, so I never had any other thought than thinking that we were all one community.
Yeah, exactly. Dan Harrelson was your mother's brother, correct?
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
And he had Harrelson's IGA for all those years.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. And I wanted to talk a little bit about Yaupon in general. Of course, we had the Yaupon Beach Pier, we had Ocean Crest Pier later, and then we had Long Beach Pier. But Yaupon Pier was always real popular. A lot of people love to go out there on the pier and fish and do all kinds of fishing out there. But in the early days, it became the spot when Frank Barbie and Jerry Dillsaver later and Joe Feet started the little surf shop down there by the Yaupon Beach Pier. Do you remember that?
I do. Rick, remember how the road, Barbie Boulevard, just went down and it made the loop around, and their surf shop was in a building that at one time been a little restaurant. And
Yeah.
And I bought several surfboards from those guys. And
I would go over there and rent surfboards, but that was back in the days when they were 9-foot surfboards.
oh yeah, yeah.
So I could easily ride one of those.
Yeah, the first board that Donnie and I had was a 9-foot 6-inch board, and both of us had to carry it across to the beach. So
well, yeah, that's a good point. Me and my cousin who would come down and stay in Yaupon, we'd go down and rent the board, and it took both of us to carry it down to both of us to carry it to the ocean.
Well, both of you could probably get on it and it would float you. I mean, both of you can knee paddle. One can knee paddle.
Exactly. Yep, exactly. And then, of course, surfing evolved to where those boards got smaller and smaller.
Oh, they did. Yeah. They certainly did. And of course, you had to be lighter and lighter to ride them. Of course, I wasn't that fortunate. I gained too much weight to ride the short board, so I had to stick with the longer one.
I kept trying to surf the shorter boards, but it never worked for me. So
my brother Donnie, he was good on the short boards, and not me.
Right. Well,
surfing the hurricanes, you go out to the end of the pier and throw your board off and jump off behind it and ride the waves in.
I actually have done that myself.
It's kind of stupid, but we did it. So.
I know, right? Of course, I felt like I was such an agile swimmer. I felt like I could handle anything, but it was too rough to go out with your surfboard. The swells were too large and breaking on the shore. So you'd go throw your board off the end of the pier and then jump in and grab your board.
That's right. It worked for me.
Yeah.
Well, not a real smart thing to do, I suppose.
Yeah, I did it a couple of times, and it's not a very smart thing to do, but we survived, right?
Somehow we survived.
Somehow we did. Okay, we can't talk about Yaupon without mentioning the rides.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah.
Did you ever work for Johnny Barbie?
I did. You remember, I didn't work there until the rides were moved across the street on the second row. They were started out on the beachfront next to the pier, and then they had the bumper cars down there. But when it moved across the street, that was one of the first jobs I had that paid outside of working in the family business, and I enjoyed it. I ran various rides. It was kind of fun. Then I had to do a lot of cleaning up and picking up after people, and that it paid well for a young kid?
Well, it was one of my first jobs too. And I didn't have transportation because I didn't have my driver's license yet. So I would thumb to work every evening to go over there and work on the rides, me and Joe Clunk.
Oh, Joe.
Yep. And we would go, I worked for Johnny Barbie for maybe a couple of summers.
Mm-hmm.
And I started out on the little boats because he needed to see if I knew what I was doing. Then he moved me over to the hobby horses, the Ferris, well, not the Ferris wheel, but he moved me over to the Wild Mouse later. So I kept getting more responsibility.
Yeah,
but those were good.
Good times.
Those were good times.
Yeah. I didn't have transportation either, so we came by the beach. I'd run down the beach, get there on time, then I'd run home. And we had
Really?
a curfew, had to get home. Yeah.
Well, that was, so you would run down on the Strand?
Yeah, that's how I got to work.
Wow.
And then run back home.
That was a long ways.
2-mile run.
Yeah. Well, it kept you in shape.
Well, I don't know about that, but you're young. You can do a lot.
Yeah, you're young, right?
Yeah. And
you know, so yeah. And Johnny, when he first started that out, I remember as a young kid utilizing, like you said, the bumper cars. They were over there close to the ocean.
Yes.
By the pier. And he even had a train that went through a little tunnel and all that.
Certainly did. I forgot about that until just then. That was a lot of fun.
And he had a little small roller coaster too.
Yes. Yeah.
When he moved across the street, though, I don't remember the train anymore, and I don't remember the roller coaster. I guess the Wild Mouse took its place.
I remember the Ferris wheel was over there. I don't remember the roller coaster, but then at later years, remember he put in the go-karts on the next block down.
Yeah, you're right.
So where was the amusement park? I'm trying to visualize it.
So you go down Barbie Boulevard in Yaupon and you're heading towards the ocean. So you go all the way to the ocean and it would be to the left of Yaupon Beach Pier. That's where it was in the early years. And then he moved it diagonally across the street on the second row from there. So it would have been on the corner of Barbie Boulevard and whatever that other street is there. Those were the later years before he finally.
I think that's Cheryl Street, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe? I think so.
Yeah, maybe so. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be awesome to have that back again.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I have a grandson who's 9, and when I have him here, there's not a whole lot to do, you know? Even miniature golf is not always open. So there's not a whole lot other than going to the beach, of course.
Right.
Or the pool.
Well, you know, those were really fun years, I have to admit. You know, Johnny had the rides in there, and a lot of the tourists would go and participate and utilize it. It was a very popular attraction. And it gave us.
The arcade was there. He had the arcade even after he moved to the second row.
You know, and about the arcade there in Yaupon, some of my earliest memories are of when my parents would take me over there and it was a skating rink.
How about that? It was a lot of fun, wasn't it?
Wow.
Do you remember it being a skating rink, Ronnie?
I certainly do. I remember Frank Barbie running around through there. He was an excellent skater, and but he'd run overs.
Ice skating. I can picture that. Oh, what is skating? Oh, it is ice skating. Oh, okay. Roller skating.
Nice hardwood floors.
Yeah.
Wow.
And right beside that building was a little putt-putt golf course. And then on the outside of the putt-putt golf course, they had built a gazebo type thing that had a jukebox in it. And that's where all the older kids would go and dance. They'd play the jukebox, play songs.
Wow.
And that's even a memory of when I was like, before I started school, you know, my parents would take me over there and I could see, you know, all the young adults doing that type of stuff.
Well, that's where the big guys were, you know? We weren't
Yeah.
welcome there. Yeah.
Yep. Okay.
So I have a question. So there's Caswell Beach, and then there's Oak Island that was Yaupon Beach, right?
Yes.
So what made the division, and when did Oak Island become Oak Island?
It's not been too many
1999.
years ago.
Yeah.
Ronnie, do you know?
Yeah, it was 1999 when they consolidated.
Right.
So there was,
Oak
okay, so
Island
there was always an Oak Island Beach. There was always there. I mean, the Oak
No.
Island section.
They called the whole area Oak Island, but it was never formally like a title as far as it being a city or anything. But when they decided to merge Yaupon and Long Beach merged together, they created the town of Oak Island.
I see. So why is Caswell Beach?
I don't know. They decided not to. They decided not to come in with the Oak Island thing.
Oh, okay. That was always kind of confusing to me because it's all one beach, you know.
Right. Yeah, they decided they had finally incorporated themselves. See, they didn't incorporate. Caswell Beach was not incorporated. I can remember when it became a town itself. And then later, when Oak Island formed, they had the chance to go in, but decided not to. Is that how you remember it, Ronnie?
That's how I remember it.
Hmm.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I want to mention, well, you can't mention Yaupon without mentioning Luke Applin's store.
There you go.
I used to go into Luke Applin's all the time, man.
Yeah.
Mostly just to get a sun drop and a pack of crackers or something. But I love going in there to visit Luke.
They were always fun to visit with, you know. In fact, I bumped into Luke a week or so back. And, he's looking well, still moving
That's
around,
great.
doing good.
That's good to hear. It
Great
really
store.
is. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about Long Beach and Long Beach memories. Somebody figured out a few years after they started that surf shop in Yaupon that Long Beach pier area had better waves. So that's where all the surfers moved to, right, Ronnie?
Well, that's what they tell me. It did seem like the waves were a little bit better down there. And so that's where we went on weekends and in the afternoons. And, you know, they had the nice pier house and had a little restaurant in it. You could get stuff, and it had bait and tackle and all kind of the novelty items that you could get there. And
That's right.
it was just a nice place. And they had an arcade at one point.
And right across the street was a motel.
Yes, I believe Sherman Blow was the original builder of the pier, and I think he already had the motel and some apartments or small cottages across the street from it.
Right. Well, I can remember going over there many a time just to hang out, whether I was surfing or not. That was the place to be. And a lot of the guys did surf, and it did seem like there was some pretty good surf there. But I remember there was always this little bit of battle with the guys trying to fish from the pier and the surfers getting too close to where they were fishing.
Oh, there's no question you could get a 2-ounce pyramid sinker thrown at you if you didn't watch out.
Yeah, exactly.
They didn't appreciate it too much.
Right. Yeah, it was always a little bit of a battle between the surfers and the fishermen.
Well, the guys that did the surfing, they kind of thought it was funny, but the fishermen certainly took it serious because they were paying good money to be up there, I suppose.
Right, right. Well, I mentioned Long Beach, and I say in my notes here, I say serious surfing. That's when we really got into some of the guys that had some natural talent, like Jon Jones. I remember, man, they were excellent surfers.
Jon was an excellent surfer, yeah.
Yeah, and he even competed, right?
I believe he did. Yeah, I think he won some contest on the East Coast, and he did very well for himself. And the Radcliffe boy, Daryl Radcliffe, turned out to be a great surfer. David's younger brother.
Yeah.
In fact, David and Donnie and Daryl all were good surfers.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember there was some serious surfing going on at that time. Those guys got really good.
Yeah. Well, you know, sometimes your interest kind of wanes when other things come up, driving cars, football. And,
That's what happened to me. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got interested in other things as well. In talking about Long Beach, I have to talk about Big Hill.
I'm
Big
sorry.
Hill was this giant sand dune.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
It wasn't even right. So the road went between it and the ocean. So it was technically second row, but it was a great large sand dune that I can remember my parents taking me over there just to let me run and play on the sand dune.
Roll down the hill. That's right. It was
Right.
between 39th and 42nd Place West, right next to Caples Hill.
Yeah.
And, I remember how sad it was when they bulldozed it down and divided it into lots.
Yep, they sure did. And that was a lot of sand to move because it was called Big Hill for a reason.
Yes, it was bigger than Caples Hill, the best I recall. But
I agree with that. Yep. And of course, Cable Hill, that's the house that I thought was the only one that survived Hazel, was the house up on Cable Hill.
No, that Mr. Cable's house survived, and then there was a house just down from us that Robert Jones had built, survived, and then another one around right past Middleton Street, and several others that I just can't recall. But those were all cinder block houses, with the exception of Mr. Cable's.
Right. Okay. And we got to mention the Point, because that was always a fun place to go. I can remember doing the loop. The loop went all the way around back in those days. And there were some pretty large sand dunes down there.
Yes, there were.
And what is that, Lockwood Folly that comes out there?
That's right.
Lockwood Folly comes out there. And I can remember being involved with a bunch of groups, maybe church groups. They would have bonfires and cookouts and fish fries, and we would have them right down on the beach.
Yeah.
And oh man,
Some
fun times.
Some of my fondest memories were fishing down there at the end when we were small. The Helms family lived right next door to us, and we would all gather, and we'd be lined up with our Coleman lanterns and that type of stuff. And Donnie and me and Mike.
You doing flounder gigging?
No, we just did surf fishing, and you get something on there. We were so small, we really couldn't reel them in, so we had to back up and drag them up on the beach. But have a fire going. Most of what we did was ate nabs and Vienna sausages and run up and down the beach. So
right, it was just
grown-ups fished.
Yeah, the fun wasn't so much necessarily the fishing as it was a chance to get out there and have a good time.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well, so a lot of the beach memories also include not just down there at the Point, but I even did it a few times on Fort Caswell Beach, where we would put the nets out for the spot runs.
Oh,
and we would catch. Sometimes you couldn't hardly pull the net in. It was so full of spots.
That's right.
And then we would clean a bunch and cook them right there on the beach. And that was some of the best tasting fish spot I've ever had. Fresh out of the water like that. Yeah.
I wish I had some of that right now, don't you?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
We were extremely lucky. Like I said, the Helms family was right next door to us, and they ran the fish market. So we always had plenty of fresh fish, and Mr. Helms always had a haulback right across from the store, and we would help him pull it and help him clean it, the net and that type of stuff. And it was just so much fun. And it was a simpler time.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, my grandfather used to take me all over there in that back in Davis Canal. He showed me how to find clams. He showed me how to find oysters. Mm-hmm. And back then, that was all open. You could get clams and oysters out of there. Yeah. So, we're talking the early 60s.
Yes. So, pretty well polluted now. I don't think I wouldn't be getting too much out of it. The clams you could probably still get, but I wouldn't want to be raking any oysters out of there, I don't think.
Right. Right. Well,
you think about it, Mike, living over there and even in Southport, we probably had one of the best childhoods anybody could imagine. You had the ocean and the woods. We would go hunting on the island in the wintertime and fishing and swimming and surfing in the summertime. I mean, it really didn't get much better than that.
I agree.
And,
I
we
agree.
talked
And
one
down
time
there,
before, but no matter where you were at lunchtime, that's usually where you ate. And
yeah.
you couldn't do anything wrong unless somebody, they call on you and tell on you.
Yeah, that's right.
Anything.
If Liz was on here today, some of my stories I tell about some of the things I did, Liz would go, Mike, did your mom know you were doing this?
Not until later years, no.
Yeah, not until later. Yeah. Okay. Ronnie, I mentioned the other day when we were talking, there was a pavilion on Long Beach that Carl Watkins and Eugene Tomlinson ran. And I have no memory of that. I have a very vague memory of it. Can you tell us a little bit about that, where it was located?
Well, I can. It was on the corner of 46 and East Beach Drive, 1 block down from our store. And of course, there was one there before Hazel, which was demolished, obviously. And then after Hazel, they rebuilt, and Mr. Watkins ran it and Mr. Thomason ran it. I'm not sure if they also had something to do with the one before Hazel or not, but then there was right next to it coming east was a putt-putt. They had putt-putt there as well. And I believe that was run by Jimmy Bigford, and had a trampolines, and across the street there was a shuffleboard court and that type of stuff. But eventually another storm got it. Before Hazel, next to the pavilion, my dad and Jimmy Bigford had a small little carnival too, and they never rebuilt after Hazel. I guess so. Too much of a loss.
Jimmy Bigford, was that Mark Bigford's dad?
Mark Bigford's uncle.
Uncle,
yeah. They lived a few houses down from us as well.
Right.
Alice.
Yeah, and I want to talk a little bit about. We played baseball not too far behind your family's residence and store. There was a little baseball field there, right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That was originally Lincoln Construction Company, who did most of the grading and stuff in the Tranquil Harbor section, operated a cement plant there. And in later years, they allowed us to put a big baseball field in it there, and that's where the Publix grocery store is now on the island.
Really?
Yeah, and you hit a home run.
I thought they still had a ballpark there.
Oh no, that's over behind 48th Street or 46th Street. I'm sorry, where Town Hall is. But
my recollection of it being behind your store is correct, right?
That is correct. If you hit a home run, you only hit a home run if it went in the ditch. So.
Right. I remember the ditch. Okay. All right. So we kind of tagged in and out of this, the hurricanes, but the biggest one, of course, is Hazel. But living on the beach the way you did, it was a constant thing. You guys had to constantly deal with the storms, but it was a way of life that you all loved, and you did it. You dealt with it, correct?
Oh, yeah. My dad and mom were very in tune to the weather after losing everything to Hazel, and so we made precautions and we did things that we should do to prepare for them. And normally, if a storm was coming in, if it warranted, we would go inland, would go over and stay with somebody in Southport, or maybe just a little bit further inland on the island. I had an uncle that lived up in the golf course section there. We'd go over to his house and stay there.
Right.
Or the Helms house right across the bridge too.
Yeah, and there was always, some storm or another, and there also was some storms that were pretty bad but weren't called hurricanes.
Sure, we just had one a couple of years back. Isa, I think his name was.
Yeah,
that did a lot of damage on the island.
I remember several years ago they called it the no-name storm. I was helping Sam Keziah move from Yaupon Beach, and we had parked the U-Haul where we'd been moving a bunch of his stuff under the canopy at a gas station. We'd gone in to get something to eat, and we looked out and saw that canopy wobbling like that. And Sam goes, I better go move that U-Haul because it was right under it. So he goes and moves it and we finish eating, but it didn't blow off then. But when we came back by later with another load, there was a canopy
Gone. It was
laying
gone.
on the ground. Okay, let's talk about your mom and dad, Dan
Right.
and Inez Shannon.
Well,
Give me a sense of how they met in the early years and all
Oh,
that.
yeah. Okay. My dad lived here in Southport because his father was the manager of the railroad. They came here around 1923, and Dad graduated here in Southport around 1937, somewhere there. And Mom was a Harrelson. She was raised out in the county. I think she went to Bolivia High School. Right after high school, she went to nursing school, Presbyterian in Charlotte. Came back and started working at Dozier. Dad met a couple years. They met a couple years later, and they got married, and they ran a couple of businesses here in Southport, and moved out to the county eventually, and ran a store out in Orton at the mouth of the main entrance to Orton.
Right.
They had two children that died tragically in a drowning accident in 1950. And soon after that, in 1951, a fire came through and caught their house on fire, and they lost it. So they ended up moving over to the beach in 1951, early 52, something like that. And that's where he bought the house, and then they built the store. And then in 54, they adopted Donnie and me. And then 54, Hazel came and tore everything down. So they had to start back over. You know, and after growing up and hearing all those stories and stuff, I still never heard them complain. Never said a harsh word about anybody or anything. So
All those times they had to start over.
yeah.
They never complained.
Well, you know, it's kind of like with a boxer. Once you get knocked down, you just get back up and fight another round, and that's what they did. And they were truly people that love people. They put their heart and soul into that island. So.
Yeah. Yeah. Were they very involved with the island in terms of the island government, the city governments and stuff?
Neither one of them ran for any kind of office. Dad, right after Hazel, because they had nothing, left. Dad worked helping Mr. Middleton pull brush and stuff and rebuild the dunes. And he also went to work for Mr. Middleton as a town clerk and making a little bit extra money then. And so in 1960, he ended up having to stop all that and got more involved in his business because it was picking up. But he was on all kinds of different committees and stuff. He was instrumental in, and he and Mom both in the fire department rescue squad and establishing that. And Dad worked hard at getting the Little League started on the island, the Dixie Youth Baseball. And
what years did that start?
Beg pardon?
What years did the Little League start on Long Beach?
Mike, I don't know. I don't know. I guess I was 6 or 7 years old when it started, maybe a little bit older than that. I just don't know. So
Okay.
that was 61, 62, maybe.
Because I thought I had a memory of you guys playing on the Southport teams. But if it started that early, then no, we played y'all, I guess.
Yeah, I don't remember that playing in Southport. I remember Dad and Charlie Sides were instrumental in that. And CL Side, you remember his boys?
I sure do.
Mike and Vicky, the daughter.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Well, so I think it's probably safe to say that if I was born in Dozier in 1955, your mom probably helped in the delivery process, right?
It wouldn't surprise me at all. She was still pretty active nursing full time back in the day. I know, and I'm sure I've told you this story, and I'll share it with the people watching. My mother was assisting in a birth of two boys or two twins, and the doctor, old Fred Burdett, said these children are going to be put up for adoption. Well, mom and dad had already lost their biological children, and mom said, well, I sure would like to have them, or I'll take them. And so the long and the short of it is we were fortunate enough to be adopted by two wonderful parents. And that's how we ended up being a Shannon.
Yep, they definitely were two wonderful people. I have a fond memory of just stopping in one day. I think it was as late as you and I had already played together on the football team in high school. And I pulled in one day and I happened to catch your dad and your mom both in the store. And I had just a wonderful time spending, about 30 minutes just chatting with them, talking to them,
Yeah.
enjoyed it.
All that goes back to how close the two communities were to each other and how they were connected. Your mom worked at the post office. My dad started a post office on the beach, so they had the connection there. And of course, most of the people, there were so many people in my dad's family and married everybody from Southport, so I suspected we're related somehow.
That's right. Okay. That's it, Ronnie, unless you have anything you want to add that I might have missed.
No, I think we're pretty good on that, Mike. I do want to thank you both again for letting me come in and talk with you a little bit.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Does anybody have any questions?
I wanted to ask Ronnie to talk, and you too, Mike, talk a little more about Mr. Middleton, because we were talking about Mr. Middleton before we started. And
my recollection of him, he was just a very kind man and a shrewd businessman on top of everything else. I told Bob earlier how he would come in the store and chat with us. In fact, Dad had a bench built and had Mr. Middleton's initials on it, and another Mr. Oliver, I believe his name was.
Participants.
And they would sit up there and sit outside and talk and chat.
I never got to know Mr. Middleton, so I'll have to rely on you, Ronnie. He sounds like a great person.
He was very nice.
Talking about the fellow that he tore up the.
Oh yeah, he had done it for other people. Mr. Middleton was in the store, and in the wintertime there was very little money coming in, and so Dad had gotten behind on a couple of payments on some lots, and Mr. Middleton noticed that there was a letter from E.F. Middleton Corporation laying up on the counter of the store, and so he asked Dad what that was, and Dad told him, well, I'm late on a couple of payments, and so Mr. Middleton just reached over and tore it up, and he said, I'll take care of it, or something to that extent. And that was the end of that. So,
oh man, that's great.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't forgive the loan. He just let him pay it later. It wasn't. He was
right. Right. Well, he knew what life was like over on the beach.
My other question involves the Baptist convention on Caswell Beach. You mean neither one of you fellows there went to check out things, make sure everything was going right and everybody was happy there?
Well, we said we we're going to keep it clean.
Yeah. Yeah, I had some experiences in there, but I wasn't an official camper.
No, I wasn't either. I've been chased out of better places, haven't you?
Yeah, I'd get chased out of there. So the alarm went off for lights out one night. It was like a siren or something. And I went running because I thought I was going to get caught. And I went running. I'm barefooted. And I'm halfway across the field before I realize it's full of sand spurs.
Yeah, the one right there at the gate, the big field at the gate. Yeah.
And I had to keep going, and it's nothing but sand spurs. I had to keep going.
Remember that big old Brahma bull we had in there?
Yeah. Yeah. I used to, me and my buddies from Southport side, we would take our skiffs, our boats, because we all had boats at like 14 years old. And we would anchor just off Fort Caswell so our boats wouldn't be left high and dry. And we would swim in, and then we would go in from the beach side, but on the Southport side, and walk around just like we were campers, and we'd go in there. They had that little place where you could go get soft drinks. What was that called? It was something
drop in or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, Coach Smith's father was the manager of that for years. Yeah,
Right.
Fred Smith.
Right. Yeah, he never caught me in there.
No, I never got caught. Got chased.
Me either.
Never got caught.
Yep, got
Later
chased.
years, yeah, later years, Rick Holbrook ran it, you know.
I've got a
Right.
question. If I could ask, I'm coming up as Jill, but we're in Minnesota right now, and we've come out to Oak Island for several years and stayed there. And I've always got in the back of my mind when I'm there is if you're growing up as a kid, like you say, running around through the woods and the sand dunes and the whole bit, how conscious of you were you or had to be of like alligators or poisonous snakes and that? Was it a major concern or just never turned out to be a problem?
I didn't have any concerns. I never really thought about it, I suppose. I guess, you know, when you're that age, it's just not something that crosses your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, and same with me. I was aware, you know, and I was always on the lookout. But you know, I pretty much did whatever I wanted to do in the woods. But you know, you're right. There was a lot of times we'd walk up on copperheads and stuff like that. Not so much a problem with alligators, although, you know, I have told stories before about swimming in certain lagoons that I probably should have been more aware of alligators. And it was even brought up by one of my childhood friends. Weren't you afraid of alligators? And I said, you know what? I should have been. I didn't even think about it. So we survived some stuff.
We did.
Yeah.
You know, I think we had some special force looking over us.
And one of the other memories that I have that I like, if you just give me just a minute, we used to have a fox hunt down here every year.
Yeah.
And that was during Washington's birthday, and it was a way to raise money I guess they had to pay some kind of a fee, and then we'd sell barbecue and have a big cookout for all the fox hunters. And at the end of the fox hunt, we'd have this cookout up at Yaupon Beach pier, and Carl Watkins would cook a big clam chowder or something in a big cauldron. It was wintertime. It was a lot of fun, and they came from everywhere to run the foxes and the hounds.
Huh. Cool.
Yeah.
Long time ago, Mike.
I know. Some good times. Anybody else have any questions for us?
I do.
Go ahead.
Sam Carr. Looks
this-
like Sam Carr right there.
Hey, Ronnie, this is Martha Proctor. It says Henry, but it's Martha.
Hey there.
I am here with a surprise for you. This
I
is,
know. Look at brother. Look at that Al.
you see Al, you are observant. This is your Uncle Al that I've got here at the house.
Oh,
Oh my God. Thank you.
Yes,
I was telling Bob, I just talked to him not too long ago.
he told me you did, and I was anxious for him to see you today on this program. So
You're
here
looking
we are.
well.
Here we are.
Glad to see you.
You too. You're looking well.
Thank you. You too.
We
Everybody in
enjoyed
the family doing good, I hope.
everybody's well. We enjoyed
Good.
your presentation, Ronnie.
Well, thank you. I'm glad I've got a chance to see y'all again.
Thank you. Come anytime to visit.
I'd love to. I'd love to.
Okay.
very cool. Okay. If there's no more questions, I'm going to say goodbye to everybody and thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mike.
Thank you.
Yep, Ronnie,
You too, Bob.
thank you very much. It
Thank
was
you.
nice walking down memory lane.
We'll do it again next time you're in town.
Sounds good. We'll
Bye-bye.
tell some football stories.